What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel once again, and welcome to a last minute prediction video as we are set for a huge 5 round main event between Calvin Kattar and Arnold Allen in the UFC's featherweight division, of course. So, this is going to be a huge fight, and I'm totally expecting fireworks from two explosive strikers in the UFC's featherweight division. Calvin Kattar, of course, has been part of some banger fights lately. Arnold Allen, on the other hand, is on the back of a huge TKO victory over Dan Hooker. But before getting into the details for this fight, I would really appreciate if you guys could subscribe to the channel. And you know the drill. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. As you guys know, it really helps me a lot with this channel. All right, now getting into the facts for this 5 round main event, we are going to start off by looking at the fighter resumes. First up is, of course, Calvin Kattar, who is coming into the fight on the back of a loss to Josh Emmett. Of course, the two men fought back in June in a 5 round main event. Yeah, 50-50 in the books of some. That fight, some scored it in favor of Josh Emmett, some scored it in favor of Calvin Kattar. While the decision is a bit arguable, I must say that when I first saw that fight back in June, I did think that Josh Emmett did enough to win that fight throughout the entire 5 rounds to eventually get that victory. I think he won 3 rounds to two, and it wasn't really a robbery, to be honest, because let's just be honest, we all have seen worse decisions in the UFC, especially after what we just saw at UFC 280 between Peter Yan and Sean O'Malley. We all have seen a lot worse than, the decision between Josh Emmett and Calvin Kattar, of course. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Josh Emmett did enough to just edge past Calvin Kattar in that fight. But nonetheless, one interesting fact regarding Calvin Kattar is that he has never lost two back-to-back fights throughout his entire career, not just his UFC career, throughout his entire career. All right, so yeah, Calvin Kattar, that's all that matters. Like, he has never really lost two back-to-back fights, so I think that could play maybe a crucial factor in coming into this fight, given the fact that he lost such a close fight against Josh Emmett in his last one. But yeah, um, one other thing is the fact that Calvin Kattar is currently 1-2 in his last three fights. That one other loss being, of course, to Max Holloway, who, let's just be honest, he completely dominated Kattar throughout that entire fight. Loss of volume striking from the former featherweight champion, and that fight was like simply one-sided. One of the worst beatings in UFC history, to say the least. But props to Calvin Kattar, though, the way he bounced back from that loss to Holloway, like the way he humbled loudmouth Giga Chikadze. I pretty much talk about this Calvin Kattar versus Giga Chikadze fight every now and then, and I just love talking about that fight because that right there was one of the most satisfying beatings I have seen in UFC history. Because leading up to that fight, you had Giga Chikadze, who was overlooking Calvin Kattar. To be honest, he was taking shots at featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He was saying that Volk took an easy fight. He took an easy route by accepting the fight against the Korean Zombie back then. And yeah, he paid the price for it big time. He absolutely got dominated by Calvin Kattar. Kattar simply shut down Giga Chikadze and his kickboxing throughout that fight. Yeah, eventually unanimous decision victory. Fight of the night as well. Prior to that, of course, he lost to Holloway, and before that, he got two big wins. One against Dan Ige, once again, very dominant performance against Dan Ige. I still remember watching that fight live. Very dominant against Dan Ige. Calvin Kattar coming back after a victory over Jeremy Stephens, of course, who he knocked out via elbows at UFC 249 in 2019. And prior to that, of course, he lost to Zabit Magomed Sharipov Zabit, of course, who has seemingly retired, I believe. Yeah, it's pretty much confirmed at this point that Zabit has retired. But yeah, Calvin Kattar's resume is looking like it's such an impressive resume, man. Like, his recent fights, I must say that his resume could potentially be one of the factors in this fight, because I think he has a lot more experience compared to Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen, not really fighting such high level fighters, such big names throughout his UFC career. And one other factor is that Arnold Allen made his UFC debut in 2015, whereas Calvin Kattar made his UFC debut in 2017. So Arnold Allen made his UFC debut 2 years prior to Calvin Kattar, and he hasn't really been fighting these many big names. He hasn't been that active throughout his UFC career. Because let's pull up Arnold Allen's resume here. He has fought once this year, of course. I mean, the Dan Hooker victory is probably the biggest victory of Arnold Allen's career so far. Yeah, that's like the most notable name I can see on his resume so far. But yeah, he did defeat Sodiq Yusuf Of course, a ranked fighter, ranked featherweight. That was a good victory. Prior to that, Nick Lenz, Gilbert Melendez, good names, big names, I must say. But if you compare it to Calvin Kattar's record, even if you go back to 2017 when Kattar made his UFC debut against Andre Fili, one of the absolute dogs in the featherweight division, then he went on to fight Shane Burgos, whom he beat by TKO at UFC 220, 2018 that was. 2018, he lost to Renato Moicano, another dog in the UFC's featherweight division. And then Ricardo Lamas, another big fighter, Zabit, another big fighter, Jeremy Stephens, Danny Gay, Holloway, Chikadze, Josh Emmett. So yeah, Calvin Kattar's resume, I think, is way, way more better. He has a lot more experience compared to Arnold Allen. Allen, meanwhile, let's just check his resume. Yeah, I can only see a few big names here. Like I mentioned, Gilbert Melendez is one of the big names. Sodiq Yusuf is up there. Dan Hooker is up there as well. But yeah, the Dan Hooker fight, I mean, Allen looked really good throughout that fight, I must say. I mean, even though it ended like within 2 minutes and 30 seconds of the first round. But yeah, the problem with that fight is Dan Hooker made a huge mistake by coming down to the featherweight division. That weight cut was absolutely brutal for him, I must say. And in simple words, Dan Hooker shouldn't have never really gone to the featherweight division. But yeah, props to Arnold Allen though. Like he did his job. He went out there, got the finish by a first round TKO. But as you can see, there is this certain pattern in Allen's UFC record. He is lacking a lot of finishes. He isn't really known for finishing his fights. Most of his victories have been via decisions. The one time that he finished a fight was prior to the victory over Dan Hooker was back in 2018 when he beat Mads Burnell. He defeated him via a front choke submission, of course. 2018 that was. And prior to that, Alan Omer, he beat him in his UFC debut submission as well. And yeah, like that's all I can see. Three stoppage victories for Arnold Allen so far in the UFC. But yeah, the most of the victories on Arnold Allen's record have been via unanimous decisions. There was one victory via a split decision victory over Makwan Amikani, and I believe Makwan Amikani was ranked back then. But yeah, in terms of experience, Calvin Kattar, in my opinion, of course, as you can, I mean, it's pretty simple. Like he is a lot more superior than Arnold Allen, despite being in the UFC like 2 years, despite joining the UFC 2 years later. Arnold Allen. I mean, the problem with Arnold Allen is like he hasn't been really that active in the UFC, and despite being a name from the UK, the UFC hasn't really, sort of pushed him that much, as much as they have done with the likes of, Darren Till, Leon Edwards, and now even with Paddy Pimblett. But yeah, the thing is, Arnold Allen is a very talented fighter. Like he could be, he but has the potential to become the featherweight champion. Let's be honest. But the problem with him is once again the fact that the UFC hasn't really pushed him that much in the featherweight division. But yeah, this is a good start. This right here is a very good start. He is ranked at number 6. Allen, that is. Calvin Kattar is ranked at number 5. If of course, um, Allen goes on to win this fight, I'll just quickly pull up the UFC rankings and I'll just check the featherweight rankings once. But yeah, if Arnold Allen wins this fight, I'm pretty sure he's edging one step closer to a potential title shot next. Because not next, like maybe he'll need to get one more victory, but the fact that Alexander Volkanovski, the current champion, is going up a division and he's set to fight Islam Makhachev for the lightweight championship, that sort of opens up a lot of opportunities for fighters like Josh Emmett, Arnold Allen, who are very, very talented, but they aren't really getting pushed that much by the UFC. I understand maybe from a marketing standpoint, you can't really bank on these fighters. I mean, it is what it is. It's just business at the end of the day. But yeah, for Arnold Allen, from someone who is from the UK, the UFC could pretty much, give Arnold Allen big names like Calvin Kattar. And if he goes out there tomorrow night, or rather today, I believe, and gets a victory over the number 5 ranked Calvin Kattar, over someone who has fought the former champion, Max Holloway, in the past, over someone who has such experience, I think Arnold Allen could be in a prime position for a future title shot, in the near future. So yeah, as I can see, the rankings, of course, Max Holloway currently ranked number 1. Alexander Volkanovski, like I said, is set to face Islam Makhachev next, and Brian Ortega is there as well. So yeah, Ortega is another name who I think he's come so close to winning the championship. Um, he fought Max Holloway, lost to him. He fought Alexander Volkanovski in an insane fight at UFC 266. Almost had that fight in the bag, lost to him. So yeah, fighters like, you know, Brian Ortega, Josh Emmett, Arnold Allen. These fighters, could be getting that push by the UFC that might help them in achieving that title shot that they desperately need, and maybe even win the title, who knows. But for Arnold Allen, I think this is a great start for him to finally showcase what he's all about in the UFC's featherweight division, to finally establish his place like a legit top contender in this division. Because let's just be honest, I mean, other than the Sodik Yusuf win, Allen hasn't really done much in this featherweight division. All right, now getting down to the statistics and my prediction for this fight, I think despite all the credentials in Arnold Allen's resume, despite his unbeaten run in the UFC, I think Calvin Kattar has got this fight in the bag. Calvin Kattar has incredible boxing. I'm not saying like it's going to be a one-sided fight in favor of Calvin Kattar, but what I'm saying is like I don't think Calvin Kattar is going out there and he's getting dominated much like we saw with Dan Hooker, because Dan Hooker, of course, once again he had to make a big weight cut. He came down to 145 after having he was a big lightweight in the first place. He also fought in the welterweight division in the past, and for him to make 145 was just brutal at that time. So I don't think like Arnold Allen could really go out there and dominate someone like Calvin Kattar like he did with Dan Hooker. So I think Calvin Kattar's boxing is going to be superior in this fight. His head movement is another great aspect, another great talking point regarding his fighting style. Now the big question is, will he get this done via a finish or will he go to a decision? It all, I think, honestly comes down to the fact that Calvin Kattar has fought in 5 round fights. In fact, his last 4 fights were 5 round fights, all of which ended in the, of course, in the fifth round. He has fought 25 minutes over the course of his last 4 fights. Calvin Kattar knows how to survive till the very end of a fight. Even in the Josh Emmett fight, Calvin Kattar pretty much turned up in the fourth round, in the fifth round, and in the later rounds, he was surviving in there. He was putting up a good fight. So that could be a potential factor. And that's pretty much it for this video. I don't think I can really sit here and dissect and sort of, give you a full 50-minute breakdown or like a 20-minute breakdown regarding this fight, given this is the last minute prediction video. But yeah, for this last minute prediction video, I think basically Calvin Kattar has better experience. He has fought in 5 round fights in his last 4 fights, of course. His boxing, I think, is going to be a lot more superior. His head movement is going to be a lot more superior. I mean, Arnold Allen, I think this could be the end of his winning run in the UFC, and I don't think that Calvin Kattar is going out there and suffering 2 losses in a row. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is a fight. Allen is very much capable of winning this fight, and he's very much capable of, knocking out Calvin Kattar. If this is going to be a victory for Arnold Allen, the only way I think he's getting this done is by potentially knocking him out, Calvin Kattar out, or by getting a TKO victory. I don't think he's getting a decision victory. In terms of a decision victory, I think it's going to be in favor of Calvin Kattar. So yeah, my final prediction for this fight, I think Calvin Kattar gets it done by a decision victory. I think his boxing is going to be a lot more better. His head movement is going to be a lot more better. But yeah, that's it for this last minute prediction video. I will see you guys shortly for the live stream and for the watch along for the main event for Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen for this UFC Fight Night event. Of course, I'll be sitting here and doing a live stream, of course, for the main event fight, and I will also be here for a watch along and live stream of the Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul fight, which is later today. Let me know in the comment section what is your prediction. If you have any last minute predictions for Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen, let me know who you guys think is winning this fight, and I will see you guys shortly, of course. Thank you for watching.